Brazilian music is really everywhere. It's influenced by its people, it's influenced by its culture, it's influenced by the African slave trade, where they brought in drums, rhythms, dancing, and started to meld that into samba and started to meld that into different expressions and ways of life. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily hear Brazilian influence in music when it's there because they've always assumed that the term Brazilian music was bossa nova. That's what people think of when they think of Brazilian music outside of Brazil. They think of Antonio Carlos Jobim, they think of Astor Castro Neves. Those are the styles that, especially as Americans, that we were introduced to with Girl from Ipanema playing in the malls, just walking through. That's what we understood to be Copacabana, that's what we understood to be Rio, that's what we understood to be Brazil and the people. Kind of broadened my horizons when it came to Brazilian music was when I was at the University of Miami. I joined the Brazilian ensemble, and that was run by Ney Rosario, who's from Bahia, and he had two nephews who were studying there who were also from Bahia. When they started to teach me about different Brazilian songs and artists, that was when I learned about MPB, that was when I learned about samba, that was when I learned about axé. I learned all these other styles of Brazilian music that I didn't know existed because I thought bossa nova was Brazilian music. Beautiful, but it was only like this much of Brazilian music is bossa nova. I remember Ney gave me my very first Maria Rita CD. He gave me my very first Elis Regina CD. He gave me names of people to listen to. He brought in Cerrado by Javon, which when I mentioned that song to Max, Javon's son, his face just was like, oh my gosh. He was like, that's such an old song. He said that's a classic. He said, but it's not, still, like, his dad doesn't still perform them at concerts a lot, that sort of thing. So immediately Max, I think that won me some cool points with Max because because he automatically knew that I was serious when I told him how much his father Javon, influenced my understanding of Brazilian music. Ivan Lins, I listened to The Island, which is one of his songs turned into English, without knowing it was him for years. My favorite Sarah Vaughan album, Crazy and Mixed Up, she sings The Island. I would sing that song in the bathroom, in the mirror, everything, when I was 15 years old, and I did not know that this song was originally in Portuguese by a Brazilian artist who's beloved, and his name is Ivan Lins. When I found that out, I heard the song in Portuguese, and I said, oh my gosh, someone redid The Island in Portuguese. They were like, no, that's the original, and by the way, it's Ivan Lins who wrote it. That was when I started to see how deep the influence is of Brazilian music, especially amongst Americans, and we don't even know where it comes from. Being able to be influenced in Miami by the Brazilian ensemble, by the Brazilians down there I became friends with, people from Bahia, they approach music differently from Cariocas, Paulistas. Sao Paulo approach music differently from those from Recife. It's a totally different world. People think Brazil is so big, and I remind them, I said, it's like the United States. You have Southern music, you have surfer music, you have country music, you have jazz that permeates in New York. I mean, it's everywhere. It just depends on where you choose to put yourself and who you choose to learn from. That will help influence your understanding of said music. And I don't use that word loosely. I was lucky to be able to meet the people I did down in Miami and afterwards in Atlanta, because Atlanta has a quite large Brazilian population, which I think a lot of people are surprised about. Being able to meet native Brazilians in Atlanta and hearing about their perception of how Americans interpret their music. Being able to know, do you feel like we're doing it justice? Do you feel like we're making it corny? Are we missing something? Because the lyrics are very important in Brazilian music. It's not taken lightly. A lot of people in America are used to saying the composer, and the lyricist a lot of times gets left out. And that is not done here. People will say lyricist, composer, arranger, oh, and the English was done by so and so. It's a very large area of respect that I also had to learn during my studies and during my experience. Brazilian music as a whole has a soul, and it has a beat, and it has a lesson, and it has a story. Like a lot of historically black music from America, where we focus on drums and rhythm and bass and movement with our bodies, same can be said with Brazilian music. And I think that's where a lot of the wonderful natural blend of the two cultures and the two musics work out, where you don't know which influence is coming from this, or you don't know if this is Chicago bass or if this is Rio drums, and that's what makes general music so fascinating and so exciting. You don't know where the influence is necessarily coming from until you hear the story behind it, and then it makes you appreciate the music that much more.